I'm gonna be honest, like we have too much good shit. Like I need to cut it back. I think the streams have been too good lately.
What does he hope to achieve?
I think some of it will be a matter of reflecting
My mom
on
is
20
literally
years,
texting me nonstop.
in Afghanistan and sort of what that's meant, the price that Americans have paid there, and
Hold on.
it's sort of highlighting some of the accomplishments, but it's also kind of a moment of transition for him and his presidency. This has been a rocky period over the last couple of weeks for him and his White House, and it's kind of dominated the focus of the country and the world, and overshadowed some of the other very real problems that he and his administration are trying to tackle, whether that's COVID, whether that's a legislative agenda, or voting rights. There's a number of things on their agenda that they want to get to, and so how much of this is the closing of a chapter and hoping to move on to something different? But as our colleagues have highlighted before today, there's a lot of next chapters for Afghanistan and a lot of reasons that this is going to be an ongoing issue for him and his White House to confront, whether that's refugees being settled or the current state in Afghanistan, or preventing future terrorist attacks from an area that is now potentially unsafe. And so how much of Biden is he setting the table for that next chapter, even without the U.S. troop presence in Afghanistan?
The president expected to speak really at any moment. We've passed that 2:45 time, but that could be an estimated time, Matt. As we know, we will be watching the White House and bringing you President Biden's address as soon as we have word that he is prepared to speak to the nation. The address today talking about the end of the 20-year war, America's war in Afghanistan, coming to a conclusion as the last plane.
They have been battering my man nonstop, dude. It's really fucked up. It is really fucked up that they have just been shitting on Biden. Like, I've been riding with him so hard. This is horrifying and wrong. Americans don't leave Americans behind.
I think this moment is for the, let's say, 250 Americans and so many others, thousands of Afghans who were still desperate to try to get out.
Bro, I saw a lady on Instagram. I don't know how real this is, but apparently there's this like white lady in Afghanistan that refuses to leave until like 150 of the shelter dogs that she has are all evacuated. And at that point I was like, listen, lady, like, I mean, you stay there then. Like, that's crazy to me. I don't know if it's real or not, but like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Like what? By the way, that's how Hollywood I am. That, like, my friends were like sharing that to be like, we need to save these dogs. You know what I mean? Like, my friends weren't like sharing that to be like, yo, this lady is not leaving. That's kind of wild. But they were like sharing it to be like, yo, we need to like get these dogs out, which blew my mind. A person did evacuate the rescued dogs, 150. Dude, I swear to God, white people care more about dogs than brown people. I swear to God. I don't mean like white people care more about dogs than brown people care about dogs. I'm saying like, I think like liberals unironically care more about animals than they do about humans. Like, I just like I love dogs, man. I love dogs. Okay. Dogs are fucking wonderful. We don't deserve dogs, but you're a fucking psycho if you think that like we shouldn't be using all of that space to like, I don't know, rescue refugees and shit, dude. That's nuts. A Royal Marine rescued animals from Afghanistan in a mission dubbed Operation Ark. His staff was left behind. Penn Farthing, who runs the British charity Nowzad, an animal shelter, stands in front of a cage in the outskirts of Kabul. Farthing's push to get his animals rescued from Afghanistan has been criticized by British leaders. Bro, that's nuts. That's fucking nuts, dude. Yo, this guy's last name is literally Farting. What's up with that? My man's last name is actually Farting. What the fuck? Okay, that's funnier. That's way funnier than Hakeem Butts. Call up Hakeem Butt. Paul Penn Farthing was so desperate to get out of Afghanistan with his charity staff and dozens of dogs and cats he vowed to rescue, that he appealed to a Taliban leader. Dear sir, my team and my animals are stuck at the airport circle. Farting, a former British Royal Marine who runs the Nowzad Animal Charity in Afghanistan, tweeted to a Taliban spokesman and negotiator, Suhail Shaheen. We have a flight waiting. Can you please facilitate safe passage into the airport for our convoy? The days-long evacuation mission, dubbed Operation Ark, ended on Sunday in what Farting called a partial success. He arrived at London's Heathrow Airport on a privately chartered flight with his animals, but no staff. We have just unloaded the last of our dogs and cats at the temporary lodgings, following a long and difficult journey from Afghanistan, the Nowzad team posted on Sunday. Adding, the Operation Ark mission is still ongoing, and we are working tirelessly to ensure that we reach a positive conclusion for our staff. Okay, straight up. That's it. Like, that's... I'm calling it, dude. I'm calling it. Rich white people care more about dogs than they do about the sanctity of brown lives, dude. Straight up. Straight the fuck up, dude. Oh my God. Why the fuck would anyone evacuate dogs? Are the Taliban gonna do dog genocide or something? I mean, they're probably not gonna be well taken care of, let's be real, but like, they wouldn't let him bring his staff. He was there with them, but then was forced to leave when the attack happened. After that, they wouldn't let him bring any staff. Nuts, dude. Every single airplane that landed in that airport should have been full of refugees and nothing else. Changed my mind. The days-long evacuation. We've just unloaded. The high-profile evacuation that unfolded on social media left Farting clashing with senior UK officials. The former Royal Marine said his government abandoned him following the Taliban's swift takeover of Afghanistan after he refused to leave without his staff and animals. But some British leaders said Farting was pulling precious resources from the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Kabul, where tens of thousands of people have fought to get onto evacuation flights. British Defense Secretary Ben Wallace, damn dude, Ben Wallace is killing it post career. It's wild. Like my man went from fucking playing basketball, being one of the greatest like defensive basketball players, to like becoming the British Defense Secretary. Good for him. Secretary Ben Wallace had refused to airlift animals on Royal Air Force aircraft, pledging to prioritize people over pets. Wallace also told the LBC that Farting supporters had taken up too much time of my senior commanders. This guy's like literally non-fucking stop, probably hammering the local the official channels, like talking about how he's like, I need to evacuate my dogs, my doggos, my doggery-doos. I must evacuate my doggies. POV, you are an Afghan translator desperate to board the plane while the U.S. soldiers roll on 150 dogs. Yeah, it's nuts, dude. It's nuts. But it's the truth. In an audio recording leaked to the Sunday Times, Farting can be heard leaving an expletive-filled message for Wallace's special advisor. Get me out of Afghanistan with my staff and my animals, Farting said in the recording. I served for 22 years in the Royal Marine Commandos. I am not taking this from people like you who are blocking me. You've got till tomorrow morning. Farting began lobbying British Prime Minister Boris Johnson in mid-August to stop plans to pull troops out of Afghanistan. Shall I say anything else here? Malarkey is not live yet, but he will soon. My man is just straight farting, dude. He's got doo-doo coming out of his fucking orifices here on this one. We must keep the British Royal Commandos' presence in Afghanistan so I could keep playing with my doggos in Afghanistan. You have till tomorrow, or else I will write a scathing article. So he did a campaign. Comedian Ricky Gervais and actor Dame Judi Dench were among the celebrities who shared their support for the rescue effort. This is what I'm saying, dude. Like, bro, I'm sorry, but like in a humanitarian crisis, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you guys. I do not give a fuck about the dogs, okay? Like, I literally do not give a single fuck. Like, the cargo hold, people are like literally standing on top of one another on the fucking C-17s on the cargo hold, like clinging on to the sides of a goddamn plane. And you're gonna sit here, like, people 17-year-old boy fell off of the side of a goddamn plane because he thought like maybe I had a chance of just like holding on. And we got motherfuckers being like, yo, these doggos. Like, why doesn't this dude just stay back if he fucking cares about the doggos so much? Stay back with your fucking staff and take care of the animals for a little bit longer, and you can evacuate at a safe time. Like, fuck is ISIS gonna do, bro? They're gonna fucking what, blow up your dogs? Is that what you think? As the Taliban swept through Afghanistan's capital, Farting pleaded with his views on social media to contact members of the British government who helped get his team out of the country. Now, for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, by the way, like, just remember, like, America left Afghanistan in the exact same way we went in, okay? By blowing shit up and causing mass civilian casualties. So prolonging that effort is only going to lead to more bloodshed. So this dude is like, we need to keep the British Navy in Afghanistan so I can have fun with my dogs. Like, so fuck you, okay? How about that? I mean, how about fuck yourself, okay? That's Mr. Farting. It's Mr. Flatulence to you, sir. I apologize. Anyway, we talked about how the British people care more about the lives of dogs than they do about human beings, and that we should just keep having a permanent military occupation in Afghanistan so Mr. Farting can keep farting his fucking, keep farting out of his doo-doo ass. Okay.
How crushing do you think this moment is for the, let's say, 250 Americans and so many others, thousands of Afghans who were still desperate to try to get out?
I think it's absolutely crushing. Of course, Wolf. I spoke earlier on in the day with a family of 4 from Houston, Texas. They told me they had been going to the airport for 2 weeks, trying desperately to get out. They all have American passports. They had gone to Afghanistan to visit the mother's family, and essentially the issue was they couldn't get past the Taliban. They were in touch with the U.S. military. The military was trying to facilitate their departure.
Well, how crushing.
New Biden National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the U.S. may deliver aid and economic assistance directly to the Taliban. The helicopter video Ted retweeted was fake. A viral video claiming to show a man being brutally hanged from a helicopter in Kandahar was likely an attempt to fix a flag over a public building, not a hanging. Wait, why did they think this was a hanging? Ted Cruz retweeted it. Bro, his hands are moving. Like, you can literally see that, like, who the fuck gets hanged like that? Why wouldn't they just hang him? Why would they hang him using a helicopter? At this point, said retweeted tweet from Ted, this horrifying image encapsulates Joe Biden's Afghanistan catastrophe. The Taliban hanging a man from an American Black Hawk helicopter. Tragic, unimaginable. Ted Cruz be like, it's only appropriate if American JSOC operatives are hanging people from a helicopter. Like, even if it's real, it's like how does this justify our ongoing efforts in Afghanistan? You know what I mean? Anyway, he's not actually on a fucking, he's not being hanged. He's on a harness. Inshallah, we'll make this hanging the most difficult one yet. It will be sick, bro. What I find to be remarkable is the fact that they were able to fly the fucking helicopters. Like, they picked that shit up so quick. Motherfuckers were like, oh, dude, yeah, they'll never learn. Now, the upkeep of a Black Hawk and most U.S. helicopters are insane. So, like, I don't know if they'll be able to get much utility out of it. Is this even an American helicopter? I don't know. But regardless, Afghan pilots flying this is someone I have known for years. He was trained in the U.S. and UAE. He confirmed to me that he flew the Black Hawk helicopter. Taliban fighter seen here is trying to install a Taliban flag from the air, but it didn't work in the end. But, you know, overall remarkable that they just like, they just immediately picked that shit up, dude. If they get the military that the USA trained to teach them, they might be able to. Yeah, I mean, I guess they did. Wallahi, bro, if you drop me, inshallah, I will I will come back to haunt you, bro. Wallahi, bro, if you fucking drop me, I will come back to haunt you and your family, you motherfucker. They're playing GTA no cop cheat mode on. Look at him. I think he's... Wait, is he fucking... What is he doing with his hand? Is he filming himself? He's like... Astaghfirullah. I am being hanged, bro. Do you see that? My man's taking selfies, dude. I am being brutally hanged right now. This one's for the gram, bro. Inshallah. I will get many babes. I will get many babes. They will all say, Fatima will say, oh my God, Ahmed, you look so good. You looked so sexy in the fucking photo. Amrant, my queen. I'm gonna put this on TikTok and Amrant will notice. Finally. Bros, thanks for clicking onto my IG live. Inshallah, ladies, you can hang up here with me if you're lucky. Ladies, come to Afghanistan. Yeah, he's like, you know, this one I learned from David Dobrik. You know, like when he swung Jeff Wittek. Just like that, you know, bro. I am doing the same. David Dobrik. Fuck you. The Taliban will do this, but they won't do the fucking crate challenge, dude. Okay? Cowards. They're like, no way, bro. Alhamdulillah. No, sorry. Astaghfirullah. We don't do the crate challenge, bro. What do you think? We're stupid? You think we're gonna do the crate challenge? Are you crazy? I will fall. The dude is just chilling. Yeah, I mean, he's like giving a thumbs up and shit. Yeah. Inshallah, you can't. Allah protection. The CIA already got us once. The crate challenge won't fool us again. How is this the easiest way to hang up a flag? Wait, Donald Trump Jr.'s profile photo? How are the adults doing, guys? Me, I can sure use some mean tweets and competence right about now. That's so nasty. Like, because, like, even if you thought, for the record, even if you thought this was like an actual fucking Afghan person being hung by the Taliban, don't you think that this is a horrifyingly nasty fucking thing to tweet out? Like, it makes it so much worse that you thought this was real. Yeah, my impression is disgusting. I know, because I also push back my hair. I just, my father never loved me, so I'm compensating for it by getting Instagram likes. He would have to have had hired the graphic designer immediately. Trump would have never let this happen. He would. My father would have never let this happen. He would be the one hanging the Taliban or other Afghan people that we decide are the Talibans. Isn't it worse that members of our own government tweet out misinformation without checking it first? Not really shocked by anything anymore, but watching right-wing media people continue to insist that Biden was checking his watch and doing so repeatedly during the ceremony the other day. They know this isn't true, but they're trying to cement the narrative. I used to think, oh, there's video that disproves their narrative, would put an end to stuff like that. But after the past several years of watching them successfully do this over and over again, I'm no longer under that impression. At first, they tried to argue that he skipped it before it had even happened. Biden deserves shame for checking watch during dignified transfer. Biden slammed for appearing to look at his watch during the ceremony for dead Marines. Biden ripped apparently glancing at watch during ceremony for fallen troops. Dude, it literally does not matter. To be clear, there's no evidence. Like, I mean, this is such a nothing story. First of all, let me just be abundantly clear here. Okay? Even if he was literally checking his watch like this during the ceremony, I don't give a fuck. Okay? What is this symbolic nonsense, dude? The reality, of course, is that if Donald Trump did the same thing, liberal media would be losing their fucking minds in the exact same thing. And I would be making fun of it and saying, the disdain that Donald Trump has for the American military openly comes out all the time. Okay? I don't care. What is this dumb shit, dude? People look at their fucking watches. Who cares? Joey Jones on the watch controversy. Dude, really? Dude, your shit got blown out in Afghanistan, and you're gonna fucking sit here and cry about Joe Biden looking at his watch? Really? Like, come on, dude. Come on, you're not this much of a pussy. Like, I'm sorry. You will never convince. I mean, maybe he is, actually. Never mind. But, like, it blows my fucking mind that dudes who literally lost limbs are, like, now making a living crying about Joe Biden looking at their fucking watch, dude. Are you serious? Come on, dude. You're supposed to be a badass. What the fuck is this shit? Am I wrong? What is this shit? No, don't say 831 Pepela. It's crazy to me that a dude who's supposed to be a fucking badass is literally crying about Joe Biden looking at his watch after the fucking ceremony was over. Nuts. God damn, dude. It's not worth it. It is literally not worth it. It's not worth it. Oh my fucking God. Did you forget when Trump skipped a World War II veteran memorial? I don't care. I don't care. It's ridiculous. What Biden is doing right now, and even what Trump was advocating for originally, okay, with the inevitable end to the Afghan war, okay, the Afghan occupation, is better for every single veteran overall than any number of symbolic things you can shit on him for, okay? Like, it's just the truth. Pulling out of Afghanistan is better for the veterans overall, better for fucking the service members overall than any other thing. He could literally be like, I'm not going to this, Jack, and he would still be a significantly better person for the American veterans than anything else. So I don't care. I don't care. When patriots remind you that dead soldiers are the cost of freedom, they're just bragging about a bargain. Yeah, it's like no one cares. And now, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, the 13 soldiers that died is now the Benghazi. And it goes to show you, like, how little Republicans fucking give a shit about, like, actually soldiers dying. Remember when how many guys died in Niger under Trump? Like, when Trump first came into office, it was 4, right? And then, like, there was an ambush in Niger, and we just never talked about it after. Like, it was like Trump literally made one of the parents cry or something on the call. Like, he was just, he's just like, he was insane about it. Like, he was insane about it. And guess what? We fucking forgot about it. Okay, shut the fuck up. Yeah, he knew what he signed up for. He knew what he signed up for. Your son, he's dead now, but he knew what he signed up for, believe me. Hanging U.S. infidels from helicopter. Oh, David Dobrik. This man, we are doing what this man showed us. Okay, we learned from you, David Dobrik. We learned from you. Didn't they also find remains of one of the soldiers like 1 week after? No one asked any questions about it. David Dostum. David Dostum. Oh no. Yes, Dawood Dostum. Yes. Did you not know David Dostum? He's living in Turkey. He was living in Turkey. Now he's in Tajikistan. Anyway. Dude, this guy's such a warmonger. Let's hear what he has to say. Also, it's going to piss me off.
The other issue is these Americans who are, I'm sorry, these Afghans who have been close allies who weren't eligible to apply or never got around to applying for the special immigrant visas.
Actually, fuck that. I want to watch this guy crying.
I just heard a moment ago, President Biden refuses to move the August 31st deadline. He's allowing the Taliban to dictate.
This is Private Pile. If he didn't, video game himself in the bathroom.
What we do. And he's going to leave our American people behind. You fucking coward. you fucking coward.
No shot. Bro, my man's looking like shit, dude. Look at that.
Calm down, baby. Calm down.
Calm down, baby. Dude, yeah. Put that on TikTok, bro. I'm crying. Private Pile? Bro, this is the energy of every guy that listens to Drake, okay? You can't prove me otherwise. Okay, you can't prove me wrong. This is the type of dude who's like, actually, you're wrong. That fucking album cover that Drake put out is fire, bro. On God, for real, straight up. He's like, he already bought the Drake the Drake merchandise. All right, let's get to Biden.
But in a mission of mercy, 20 service members were wounded in the service of this mission. 13 heroes gave their lives. I was just at Dover Air Force Base for the dignified transfer. We owe them and their families a debt of gratitude we can never repay, but we should never, ever, ever forget. In April, I made a decision to end this war. As part of that decision, we set the date of August 31st for American troops to withdraw. The assumption was that more than 300,000 Afghan national security forces that we had trained over the past 2 decades and equipped would be a strong adversary in their civil wars with the Taliban. That assumption that the Afghan government would be able to hold on for a period of time beyond military drawdown turned out not to be accurate. But I still instructed our national security team to prepare for every eventuality, even that one. And that's what we did. So we were ready when the Afghan security forces, after 2 decades of fighting for their country and losing thousands of their own, did not hold on as long as anyone expected. We were ready when they and the people of Afghanistan watched their own government collapse and their president flee amid the corruption and malfeasance, handing over the country to their enemy, the Taliban, and significantly increasing the risk to U.S. personnel and our allies. As a result, to safely extract American citizens before August 31st, and those Afghans who had worked with us and fought alongside of us for 20 years, I had authorized 6,000 troops, American troops, to Kabul to help secure the airport. As General McKenzie said, this is the way the mission was designed. It was designed to operate under severe stress and attack, and that's what it did. Since March, we reached out 19 times to Americans in Afghanistan with multiple warnings and offers to help them leave Afghanistan, all the way back as far as March. After we started the evacuation 17 days ago, we did initial outreach and analysis and identified around 5,000 Americans who had decided earlier to stay in Afghanistan, but now wanted to leave. Our Operation Allied Rescue ended up getting more than 5,500 Americans out. We got out thousands of citizens and diplomats from those countries that went into Afghanistan with us to get bin Laden. We got out locally employed staff of the United States Embassy and their families, totaling roughly 2,500 people. We got thousands of Afghan translators and interpreters and others who supported the United States out as well. Now we believe that about 100 to 200 Americans remain in Afghanistan with some intention to leave. Most of those who remain are dual citizens, longtime residents who had earlier decided to stay because of their family roots in Afghanistan. The bottom line, 90% of Americans in Afghanistan who wanted to leave were able to leave.
Mission accomplished.
And for those remaining Americans, there is no deadline. We remain committed to get them out if they want to come out. Secretary of State Blinken is leading the continued diplomatic efforts to ensure safe passage for any American, Afghan partner, or foreign national who wants to leave Afghanistan. In fact, just yesterday, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution that sent a clear message about what the international community expects the Taliban to deliver on moving forward, notably freedom of travel, freedom to leave. And together, we are joined by over 100 countries that are determined to make sure the Taliban upholds those commitments. It will include ongoing efforts in Afghanistan to reopen the airport, as well as overland routes, allowing for continued departure to those who want to leave and deliver humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. The Taliban has made public commitments, broadcast on television and radio across Afghanistan, on safe passage for anyone wanting to leave, including those who worked alongside Americans. We don't take them by their word alone, but by their actions. And we have leverage to make sure those commitments are met.
Taliban.
Let me be clear. Leaving August the 31st is not due to an arbitrary deadline. It was designed to save American lives. My predecessor, the former president, signed an agreement with the Taliban to remove U.S. troops by May the 1st, just months after I was inaugurated. It included no requirement that the Taliban work out a cooperative governing arrangement with the Afghan government, but it did authorize the release of 5,000 prisoners last year, including some of the Taliban's top war commanders, among those who just took control of Afghanistan. And by the time I came to office, the Taliban was in its strongest military position since 2001, controlling or contesting nearly half of the country. The previous administration's agreement said that if we stuck to the May 1st deadline that they had signed on to leave by, the Taliban wouldn't attack any American forces. But if we stayed, all bets were off. So we were left with a simple decision. Either follow through on the commitment made by the last administration and leave Afghanistan, or say we weren't leaving and commit another tens of thousands more troops going back to war. That was the choice, the real choice, between leaving or escalating. I was not going to extend this forever war, and I was not extending a forever exit. The decision to end the military airlift operations at Kabul airport was based on the unanimous recommendation of my civilian and military advisors, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and all the service chiefs, and the commanders in the field. Their recommendation was that the safest way to secure the passage of the remaining Americans and others out of the country was not to continue with 6,000 troops on the ground in harm's way in Kabul, but rather to get them out through non-military means. In the 17 days that we operated in Kabul, after the Taliban seized power, we engaged in an around-the-clock effort to provide every American the opportunity to leave. Our State Department was working 24/7, contacting and talking, and in some cases walking Americans into the airport. Again, more than 5,500 Americans were airlifted out. And for those who remain, we will make arrangements to get them out if they so choose. As for the Afghans, we and our partners have airlifted 100,000 of them. No country in history has done more to airlift out the residents of another country than we have done. We will continue to work.
To be fair, no country has also done more to bomb another country like this.
We're far from done. For now, I urge all Americans to join me in grateful prayer for our troops and diplomats and intelligence officers who carried out this mission of mercy in Kabul and at tremendous risk with such unparalleled results. An airlift that evacuated tens of thousands, to a network of volunteers and veterans who helped identify those needing evacuation, guide them to the airport, and provided them for their support along the way. We're going to continue to need their help. We need your help, and I'm looking forward to meeting with you.
Inshallah.
And to everyone who is now offering or who will offer to welcome Afghan allies to their homes around the world, including in America. We thank you. I take responsibility for the decision. Now some say we should have started mass evacuation sooner. And couldn't this have been done in a more orderly manner? I respectfully disagree. Imagine if we'd begun evacuations in June or July, bringing in thousands of American troops and evacuating more than 120,000 people in the middle of a civil war. There still would have been a rush to the airport, a breakdown in confidence and control of the government, and it still would have been a very difficult and dangerous mission. The bottom line is there is no evacuation from the end of a war that you can run without the kinds of complexities, challenges, and threats we faced. None. There are those who would say we should have stayed indefinitely for years on end. They ask, why don't we just keep doing what we were doing? Why do we have to change anything?
He's right.
The fact is, everything had changed. My predecessor had made a deal with the Taliban.
Okay, that's not right.
When I came into office, we faced a deadline, May 1. The Taliban
It's been bad since day one. That never changed.
faced one of two choices: follow the agreement of the previous administration and extend to have more time for people to get out, or send in thousands of more troops and escalate the war. To those asking for a third decade of war in Afghanistan, I ask, what is the vital national interest? In my view, we only have one: to make sure Afghanistan can never be used again to launch an attack on our homeland. Remember why we went to Afghanistan in the first place? Because we were attacked by Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda on September 11th, 2001. And they were based in Afghanistan. We delivered justice to bin Laden on May 2nd, 2011, over a decade ago. Al-Qaeda was decimated. I respectfully suggest you ask yourself this question. If we'd been attacked on September 11, 2001, from Yemen instead of Afghanistan, would we have ever gone to war in Afghanistan? Even though the Taliban controlled Afghanistan in the year 2001? I believe the honest answer is no. That's because we had no vital interest in Afghanistan other than to prevent an attack on America's homeland and our friends. And that's true today. We succeeded in what we set out to do in Afghanistan over a decade ago. Then we stayed for another decade. It was time to end this war. This is a new world. The terror threat has metastasized across the world, well beyond Afghanistan. We face threats from al-Shabaab in Somalia, al-Qaeda affiliates in Syria and the Arabian Peninsula, and ISIS attempting to create a caliphate in Syria and Iraq and establishing affiliates across Africa and Asia. The fundamental obligation of a president, in my opinion, is to defend and protect America. Not against threats of 2001, but against the threats of 2021 and tomorrow. That is the guiding principle behind my decisions about Afghanistan. I simply do not believe that the safety and security of America is enhanced by continuing to deploy thousands of American troops and spending billions of dollars a year in Afghanistan. But I also know that the threat from terrorism continues in its pernicious and evil nature. But it's changed, expanded to other countries. Our strategy has to change too. We will maintain the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan and other countries. We just don't need to fight a ground war to do it.
Why didn't be like, where are we dropping next, Jack? We're dropping
Which
a
means we
Tilted
can strike
Towers next.
terrorists and targets without American boots on the ground, or very few if needed. We've shown that capacity just in the last week. We struck
Poggers.
ISIS-K remotely, days after they murdered 13 of our service members and dozens of innocent Afghans.
Yeah, not so remotely when, you know, an entire family was eviscerated.
We are
but
not done with you yet. As Commander-in-Chief, I firmly believe the best path to guard our safety and our security lies in a tough, unforgiving, targeted, precise strategy that goes after terror where it is today, not where it was 2 decades ago. That's what's in our national interest. And here's a critical thing to understand. The world is changing. We're engaged in a serious competition with China. We're dealing with the challenges on multiple fronts with Russia. We're confronted with cyber attacks and nuclear proliferation. We have to shore up America's competitiveness to meet these new challenges in the competition for the 21st century. And we can do both. Fight terrorism and take on new threats that are here now and will continue to be here in the future. And there's nothing China or Russia would rather have, would want more in this competition in the United States to be bogged down another decade in Afghanistan. As we turn the page on the foreign policy that has guided our nation the last 2 decades, we've got to learn from our mistakes. To me, there are 2 that are paramount. First, we must set missions with clear, achievable goals, not ones we'll never reach. And second, we must stay clearly focused on the fundamental national security interest of the United States of America. This decision about Afghanistan is not just about Afghanistan. It's about ending an era of major military operations to remake other countries. We saw a mission of counterterrorism in Afghanistan, getting the terrorists and stopping attacks, morph into a counterinsurgency, nation building, trying to create a democratic, cohesive, and united Afghanistan, something that has never been done over many centuries of Afghan's history. Moving on from that mindset and those kind of large-scale troop
even if a
deployments
united
will make us
Afghanistan
stronger
were to
and more
occur
effective
and were to be
and
real,
safer at home.
it would never happen in the hands
For anyone
of
who
occupying
gets the wrong
imperialist forces.
Let me
That's
say
the reality.
clearly, to those who wish America harm, to those who engage in terrorism against us or our allies, know this: the United States will never rest. We will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down to the ends of the earth, and you will pay the ultimate price. And let me be clear. We'll continue to support the Afghan people through diplomacy, international influence, and humanitarian aid. We'll continue to push for regional diplomacy engagement to prevent violence and instability. We'll continue to speak out for the basic rights of the Afghan people, especially women and girls, as we speak out for women and girls all around the globe. And I've been clear that human rights will be the center of our foreign policy. But the way to do that is not through endless military deployments, but through diplomacy, economic tools, and rallying the rest of the world for support. My fellow Americans, the war in Afghanistan is now over. I'm the 4th president who has faced the issue of whether and when to end this war. When I was running for president, I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. And today, I've honored that commitment. It was time to be honest with the American people again. We no longer had a clear purpose in an open-ended mission in Afghanistan. After 20 years of war in Afghanistan, I refused to send another generation of America's sons and daughters to fight a war that should have ended long ago. After more than $2 trillion spent in Afghanistan, cost that researchers at Brown University estimated would be over $300 million a day for 20 years in Afghanistan, for 2 decades. Yes, the American people should hear this. $300 million a day for 2 decades. If you take the number of 1 trillion, as many say, that's still $150 million a day for 2 decades. What have we lost as a consequence in terms of opportunities? I refuse to continue a war that was no longer in the service of the vital national interest of our people. And most of all, after 800,000 Americans serving in Afghanistan, I've traveled that whole country, brave and honorable service. After 20,744 American servicemen and women injured, and the loss of 2,461 American personnel, including 13 lives lost just this week, I refuse to open another decade of warfare in Afghanistan. We've been a nation too long at war. If you're 20 years old today, you've never known an America at peace. So when I hear that we could have, should have continued the so-called low-grade effort in Afghanistan, at low risk to our service members, at low cost, I don't think enough people understand how much we have asked of the 1% of this country who put that uniform on, willing to put their lives on the line in defense of our nation. Maybe it's because my deceased son, Bo, served in Iraq for a full year. Before that, well, maybe it's because of what I've seen over the years as senator, vice president, and president traveling these countries. A lot of our veterans and their families have gone through hell. Deployment after deployment. Months and years away from their families. It's so strange. Missed birthdays.
That, like,
anniversaries.
Our argument for why we got to get out of Afghanistan has to be peppered with, like,
divorces,
a boatload of reactionary, further warmongering, fear-mongering rhetoric about how there's so much terror threats elsewhere that we need to deal with.
Many have when they come home. We see it in the strain on their families and caregivers. We see it in the strain on their families when they're not there. We see it in the grief borne by their survivors. The cost of war they will carry with them their whole lives. Most tragically, we see in the shocking and stunning statistic that should give pause to anyone who thinks war can ever be low grade, low risk, or low cost. 18 veterans on average who die by suicide every single day in America. Not in a far-off place, but right here in America. There's nothing low grade or low risk or low cost about any war. It's time to end the war in Afghanistan. As we close 20 years of war and strife and pain and sacrifice, it's time to look at the future, not the past, to a future that's safer, to a future that's more secure, to a future that honors those who served and all those who gave what President Lincoln called their last full measure of devotion. I give you my word with all of my heart. I believe this is the right decision, a wise decision, and the best decision for America. Thank you. Thank you, and may God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
President Biden,
overall, you know, I feel as though it is virtually impossible for an American president to pull out of the longest war that America's engaged in without obviously saying, like, you know, we gotta use our the weapons and guns and, you know, limited bandwidth elsewhere, Jack. But ultimately, good speech. You know,
Chris,
he's still totally
was unequivocal,
unconditionally and unequivocally fucking saying, like, this is the
out
reason.
Of Afghanistan, successfully airlifting them, including 6,000 Americans. I want to bring him back, our NBC White House correspondent, Mike Memoli. Mike, what stood out for you and anything surprised you in those remarks?
Well, Tom, by my count, this is the 6th time that the president has delivered extended remarks to the American people since the fall of Kabul on August 14th. And what we heard from the president today is much of what we had heard in those previous 5 times. It's clear that the conversation and the debate that the president and members of administration are most comfortable having is on this larger question of whether to extend and even to expand the U.S. military mission in Afghanistan. You heard the president refer to the agreement that was reached by his predecessor, by former President Donald Trump with the Taliban, saying that he now was faced with the decision of whether to expand or to end the U.S. military mission. And ultimately, he made that decision to end it. But what I thought was interesting was what the president, in fact, led with. He acknowledged those chaotic, those messy, and yes, the tragic scenes that Americans have witnessed over the last 2.5 weeks as the effort was made to evacuate as many Americans and as many of our Afghan allies as possible. He did say that under any scenario, when you saw the fall of a capital, when you saw the end of a war, you were going to see chaotic scenes like the rush to the airport. He did acknowledge, again, a flawed assumption, as he put it, that the Afghan government that the U.S. had supported over the last 20 years would be able to withstand the Taliban surge for longer. But he reinforced this idea that because of the bravery of the U.S. military and because of their capacity to carry out this mission, this was largely a success, one of the most successful airlift evacuations in our history. But ultimately, what the president returned to was reframing his broader foreign policy mission, which is framing the debate of the 21st century as one between autocracies like Russia and China and democracies like the United States. And he said China and Russia would love nothing more than to see the U.S. continue to be bogged down in Afghanistan. He said the terror threat that we went to Afghanistan to confront has now metastasized beyond our borders. This is now a mission of diplomacy rather than deployments, Tom.
Also saying the decision to pull out the troops is the best decision for America. I want to bring in NBC chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel, who's live for us in Doha, Qatar this day. Richard, I have a question for you because the president also said what is vital to the nation and our interests is that Afghanistan can never be used again to be a launching pad for terrorism. But you've reported on this, and even former CIA Director Leon Panetta was talking about this today. That's not the case. That's not the reality in Afghanistan right now. The Taliban still with very close ties to all types of terror groups.
We will see if Afghanistan ever again is used as a launch pad for terrorists. But already,
this is the guy, Richard Engel. I fucking hate him so much.
With the Taliban to a degree.
Literally
I spoke to a
worst.
Taliban commander, and he said that their approach is going to be to fight ISIS, but also to bring them into the fold, to bring them into the ranks. Al-Qaeda still has very close connections to the Taliban. They have fought side by side together for the last 20 years, and there are numerous reports that Al-Qaeda leaders are going back home, being welcomed in some cases as...
Yeah, no, that person is right. Squanch Cholo, you are correct, yes. No, there's already news reports, I covered it, that a lot of the people that died in the Kabul explosion didn't actually die to the explosion, but instead to American bullets from
It is the example
military
of what
there.
has just happened. The example that a small group of Islamist fighters can push out a superpower that could inspire the next bin Laden. So President Biden talked a lot about this war being yesterday's threat, that it had gone on too long, and a lot of Americans support leaving Afghanistan. But he didn't talk very much about the current dangers, the current situation, the threats that we face today because a state in Central Asia has collapsed. It is now being controlled by the Taliban. The Taliban still have relations with other extremist groups. No real indications that they're going to break those ties. And the region itself is very, very nervous about further instability. Iran is spreading its influence. Pakistan, which has 200 million people and nuclear weapons, shares a border with Afghanistan, many tribal connections, many militant groups just on the Pakistani side of the border.
Dude, this guy's
could
so
very
horny,
easily
dude. Look
be
at how
inspired
horny he is.
by what has happened in Afghanistan. So when you talk about future threats, I think you need to recognize that what has happened right now is also extraordinarily dangerous for Afghans, for the regions, and potentially also for Americans.
Yeah, Richard, thank you. And on that point of future threats, I want to bring in NBC National Security and Military Affairs correspondent Courtney Kube, and she is live for us at the Pentagon today. Now, Courtney, he also said he had a message for ISIS-K, which was, quote, "We are not done with you yet," clearly signifying that there's still action, still combat possible in this region against the terrorists of ISIS-K.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Tom. And what defense officials have been telling me ever since that attack at Kabul airport last Thursday is President Biden has told them, go full steam ahead and dismantle that ISIS-K terror network that exists in Afghanistan. We saw the first elements of that just the next day after that attack in Kabul, when the U.S. conducted a drone strike, killing 2 ISIS-K facilitators, one of whom was an expert in magnetic explosives, which is how they believe that Kabul airport attack was carried out. But in addition to him the president laying out that the U.S. would continue to hunt down these ISIS-K fighters, he also said that they will maintain the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan, but he said we don't need to fight a ground war to do it. It's not just ISIS-K who is a very real and persistent threat in Afghanistan, but the concern is that they will grow as the Taliban now are in charge of that country and there will be ungoverned spaces there. The worry is that other ISIS fighters will move into that country, and potentially that al-Qaeda fighters might move into that country as well, that those networks will grow, that they will regenerate, and that they will be able to do what they haven't been able to do for the past several years, conduct attacks against the West and transnational attacks. We heard yesterday from General McKenzie that ISIS now is up to 2,000 hardened fighters. That's due in part to the fact that the Taliban, as they rolled through this country over the summer, they emptied prisons, letting out many of the most dangerous ISIS fighters. General McKenzie saying that the Taliban, now in charge of security for that country, are going to have a really tough time dealing with that ISIS threat, but they will reap what they sow, Tom.
Courtney, so much of the propaganda and strategy of these terror groups, including of the Taliban, is to show images that will sort of be broadcast all over the world. And we've seen those images today, the images of the Taliban surrounding the U.S. military equipment, surrounding helicopters, combat choppers, and taking, what looks like selfie videos. What type of effect is this having on our own military, leaving back this equipment? We understand the Pentagon has been saying that none of this is operable. These machines will not work right now. But what kind of message does this send to our own troops and to the world at large?
Yo, fuck everybody who's crying about this, dude. Hey, the message should be, wake the fuck up, okay? You are expendable. Your lives were sold out to the military-industrial complex in vain. If you're still feeling some fucking type of way, remember, all of those are dollar signs, okay? It's a goddamn racket, and you were an unwilling or maybe willing participant in this fucking racket.
Mortar CRAMs that were protecting the airport from incoming rockets over the...
Wake the fuck up. Also, this is really interesting. TrueAnon talked about this. I know that the Chapo boys have talked about this as well, and it's something I've noticed too, and I've briefly mentioned it. One of the most interesting things that we import is cultural imperialism, right? Like, we fucking love... We love making everyone else look like us. That's why you see the same motherfuckers who were living in caves like a month ago come down and wear backwards caps and fucking, skin tight, or not import, sorry, export. Our greatest export is cultural imperialism. That's why you see the dudes that were living in caves and wearing, the traditional clothing last week now have backwards caps, skin tight Oakleys. They look like they totally got the fucking operator fashion culture. They're totally running with that.
To get out and not bring more people out. So the last couple of days, we're just bringing out military, some equipment. The rest, as you saw, was on the tarmac and in those hangars. But the thousands of others left behind are the Afghan allies. These are people who are either SIVs or not through that process, and that is rallying defenders in non-government organizations, veterans around the country. I was on a Zoom call with a lot of them this morning. They just believe that there has to be some way to get these people out. They say that they are hearing from them, that the Taliban in the provinces are already returning to their root to their origins. They're going house to house. They're killing in the streets. And that these are the people they just have to get out. They are being told, go to safe houses, go to shelters, Don't try to go overland right now. It is far too dangerous.
Bro, they're doing
when
genocide,
the president said
dude.
today so forcefully, we will get you out if you want to come out. It is still to be determined how that is going to happen. Clearly, U.S. intelligence are going to be involved.
Sick.
There could be some helicopter extractions from other units from Pakistan, perhaps.
This shit is awesome. Like, dude, no one. I mean, this, by the way, is functionally no different than like. This is functionally no different than fucking what do you call it? Than Ted Cruz showing that fucking helicopter footage of like the Taliban are hanging dudes off helicopters. I love that. I love just fucking blasting completely unsubstantiated, unconfirmed reports, while also simultaneously avoiding the reality of what the American military may or may not have done in the past week in Afghanistan, including fucking blowing up an entire family as they intercepted with a drone strike, a surgical drone strike, of course, what they suspect was an ISIS truck with bombs in it, or how they fucking killed 2 random fucking farmers, or maybe they were the big ISIS planners. Okay? This shit is deeply frustrating, man. It's so fucking frustrating. It's like so obvious what this, what the consent that's being manufactured is right before our eyes. I'm sorry. Those helis don't work. No, the helicopters in the Bagram Air Base do work. And even if those helicopters work, who gives a fuck, dude? I don't give a shit. Dog, they had Stinger missiles that we gave them from like 30 years ago. What the fuck are you talking about? We have directly and indirectly given small arms to the Taliban for 40 fucking years. You're going to sit here and be like, I can't believe we gave them helicopters. Like, go look at the CIA Twitter account. They literally flex about how they gave Stinger missiles to the Taliban, to the Mujahideen to take out the Russians. Come on, dude. They are now our allies, okay? It is now the Taliban government. The Afghan government is now the Taliban. We gave that entire fucking country back to the Taliban.
This felt like a tale of two speeches when you see it, and perhaps it had multiple contributors into the speech, because the first part was extraordinarily defensive. At points, he even sounded like he was raising his voice when he went through his rationale for doing the withdrawal the way it was done. You can tell.
Like, what the fuck do you think the Taliban's gonna do, bro? Oh no, they have a fucking Black Hawk helicopter, dude. What are they gonna do? You think they're gonna fly it? You think they're gonna do 9/11 too, bro? Huh? They're gonna fly the Black Hawk helicopter all the way to America, dude? What are you, stupid?
Andrea pointed out, we're getting a sense of sort of what a Biden doctrine is looking like.
Motherfuckers are out there literally trying to change flags by hanging a Taliban dude off the fucking Black Hawk helicopter, trying to like put up a flag, and you're like terrified that they're gonna use that. They didn't even do 9/11-1. That's true. Donda is the album of the decade. Who's had that username since before Donda came out. Wonder why he still has that username since Donda came out. But hey, what do I know?
Awkwardly, I think, I'll be honest, at the beginning of the speech, you do wonder, like I said, the second half of his speech had a much more coherent sort of case that he was trying to make. The first part of the speech felt
22K Humvees, 42K trucks and SUVs, 169 armored MI3s, 64,000 machine guns. Yeah, guess what, bitch? Shouldn't have gone there in the first place. I don't give a fuck, dude. They're gonna make so much money selling that to like other fucking cells too. This notion that like this is, oh man, this is so embarrassing, this is so fucked up. Guess what, dude? It was also even more fucked up to continue doing this, to continue doing this song and dance. Okay? For 20 fucking years, dude. Shut up.
Korea, I'm going to negotiate an end to the Korean War. Once he was president, he did that within about 5.
Also, if the Taliban are dumb enough to drive our fucking dog shit Humvees instead of the technicals that they've built off of Toyota Hilux kits, then, you know, that's their problem. We're maybe unironically making them less combat ready by leaving those fucking old dog shit Humvees that, you know, notoriously break all the fucking time. So, you know, good luck to the Taliban, honestly, driving those fucking clunkers around, dude.
I'm Yamas. For NBC News here in New York, we thank you for watching.
Another question I have for the fucking wonderful, brilliant strategists. How do you plan on getting that back? How do you plan on getting the equipment back, boys? What should we do? How do we plan on getting the equipment back? Do you guys have a good idea? Huh? Can they get a blueprint for that helicopter and AR? What? Dude, do you guys even comprehend how difficult it is to build a fucking Black Hawk helicopter? Are you out of your mind? You think they're going to reverse engineer? You think they're going to reverse engineer the Black Hawk helicopter, dude? How are they going to fucking facilitate, like, the microchips and shit? Like, what do you think this is, bro? Yo, people literally watched Iron Man. I feel like people watched Iron Man and then they saw, like, Tony Hawk build Iron Man in a cave and were like, oh shit, this is what the Taliban are gonna do. You know what I mean? You know how fucking it's impossible, dude. It's impossible to fucking... It's not Rust. They can't just, like, craft a fucking Black Hawk blueprint. Did I say Tony Hawk? Tony Stark. Shut up. Biden saying Afghanistan was yesterday's terror threat, that he's guided by future threats. How can the Taliban, who still deny bin Laden was responsible for 9/11, controlling a country in the center of Asia, not constitute a current or future threat? Dude, this guy is so mad. He's so fucking mad. He's so mad we pulled out. Oh, stay mad, you fucking piece of shit. You garbage monster. All right, let's listen to my favorite politician in the history of the United States of America, okay? My man, let me tell you something. He got his state right now locked up by goddamn Ida, but he don't believe that, okay? Let me tell you something, Clay Higgins. Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right, Clay Higgins. He about to tell you something, okay?
Let me tell you what would be a good start for the people of Louisiana. $85 billion worth of military equipment that was left behind in Afghanistan. Yeah. We could use some
of that military equipment. We could fly back, you see. We fly back, we do crawl fishing with that. Yeah, that's right. We do that crawl fishing with that goddamn. We do the crawl fishing with the goddamn Black Hawk helicopter. We make that military gumbo. We send that Black Hawk into the hurricane. That's right. We nuked the hurricane with a Black Hawk helicopter.
Equipment that was left behind in Afghanistan. Yeah. We could use some of those assets for the citizens of America. Right. Let us put America first. Let me tell you.
It's time to put America first, I tell you. Everybody told me I can't shoot the hurricane. Well, that's right. That's my God-given right to do so. I'll tell you what. Dude, I love Clay Higgins. Like, just incredible person. We've talked about it before, like, just, you know, classic theater kid. Okay, classic theater kid who he's a total Southern dandy. Okay, absolutely, like, in every way. He's lost a lot of weight. I wonder if he got COVID. One of the best characters in Congress. He used to be, like, way fatter. I don't know what happened. Like, he was like way thicker. Them ivermectin shits. Anyway. Asexual reproduction. There's 2 of him now, probably. What? You should play Donda on loudspeakers in Afghanistan. That'll teach him. No, dude. Then everyone... Dude, first of all, the Taliban fears Donda because, you know, you listen to Donda multiple times, you're going to turn into a Christian, okay? Everyone's going to become evangelical Christians. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know if you want the Taliban teaming up with the evangelicals out here, man. These people are the real threat to America right here. Oh, 100%. 100%. I wanted to show you guys. Wait, does anyone have that video of the Taliban walking into the fucking airport hangar with, like, they're kitted out? Biggest Turkey-sponsored vlogger, David Dostum. Okay, you guys got to stop with this, dude. Scenes from Afghanistan. Here's what happened today. No, but, like, no, the video. There was a tweet with the video. Do not be fooled. This video does not show American troops in Kabul. These are Taliban troops wearing American tactical gear, brandishing American weapons and American night vision goggles, and inspecting the helicopters Americans left for them. Yeah, that's right. Stay mad, Benny. Our boys are on the come up, baby. Let's go, dude. Hey, here's a good idea. Don't go to Afghanistan. Do not come. Okay, guess what, dude? That shit would have never happened if you didn't fucking choose to go there, you know? I mean, dude.
Oh. All right.
It's called the Octrillionaire grind set, baby.
We're here right now with the Taliban as they enter into the, what was only minutes ago, was an American-controlled portion of the military airport. Now,
seize billions of dollars of weapons that the imperialists left behind. Use their weapons. Dress up like them. It's called loot, motherfucker. You never played a video game? That's the Sigma Taliban Taliban grind set, dude.
We're here right now with the Taliban as they enter into the, what was only minutes ago.
Listen, bro. Listen. When you get enough kills, you get the skins, okay? They unlock the skins. What do you want them to do? Fucking loot drops, baby. Let's go. They simply visited the first level question mark on map. Turns out it was free loot. I mean, a better fucking a better song to this is not even the Sigma grind set, but like this one, dude. Dude, they got the fucking gear. They're dressing up like the American special forces. You wrong for that? Yeah, the plug has always been the same, by the way. Okay? The plug has always been the same. It's never been different. It's always us. We're the plug, dude. The military simply decided these uniforms and helos didn't spark joy. Like, how did that get there, bro? How did all that shit get there? To begin with, that's crazy. That's crazy, man. How did that happen, dude? We should perhaps never do that again, I think. We'll just let them fucking deal with the problems of like upkeep and shit, you know? Let them fucking deal with it. What the Taliban did as soon as the US left Afghanistan. Oh, I want to watch this more.
As the last US military aircraft took off. A local reporter working with CNN said heavy gunfire could be heard and tracer fire arced across the sky. Taliban fighters were seen on the streets firing automatic weapons into the air. A video on social media purported to show Taliban fighters walking toward the airport. Later, they could be seen in the airport hangar viewing the military equipment left behind. An LA Times Middle East bureau chief, Nabi Boulos, was at the airport when Taliban fighters entered a hangar housing US military equipment, including a CH-46 C-9 helicopter, and he spoke with CNN about what he witnessed.
So we took this video minutes after the last American plane had left. I mean, at that point, you had the Taliban sort of massing around the sides of the airport. And then when they saw that there were no more planes, they waited a bit and then went inside en masse. And we were like, I think the first wave, we were able to go towards the gate that had been, up to a few minutes before manned by the Americans. And they went in, they were able to examine the hangars, the tarmac, of course, and they were doing a full sweep of what they had basically been able now to commandeer. I mean, now the airport is basically fully in their hands. They've taken the entire area now.
And CNN's international security editor, Nick Payton-Walsh, is following all the developments and joins me now from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar.
Bro, all of this equipment has already been paid for 11 times over. What you are not understanding is that that's like old ass shit. Okay? That's old ass shit. We already have paid for the R&D and also manufacturing of all of the newer versions of that. It's cost so much more money to just like bring him back home for no fucking reason. So of course they blow it up and then leave it behind. And that's what they've always done, by the way. It's significantly more expensive to just like fucking pull them back than to, keep them there and decommission them. Just the truth, man.
Nick, what is the latest from there?
Well, this is the scene from which about half of this extraordinary evacuee airlift we've seen over the last week came, but it's also the site really from where the end of the United States' longest war ended up.
It's non-operational too. They're supposed to be decommissioned. If they didn't decommission them, then that's kind of on the fucking military. I'd be surprised though.
Air Base in Qatar, a huge stretch of desert, frankly, where your shoes melt on the tarmac, an incredibly hard place to put refugees over a protracted period of time. And it's fair to say, I think they admit here, the initial challenge was immense as tens of thousands of people poured out of the sky on these extraordinary C-17 aircraft. They've been repeatedly moving one after another. And clearly here, one of the last aircraft out of Afghanistan landed. So it's a very fraught moment, I think, for many here to feel the emotions of this coming to an end. There have been 55,000 evacuees that have come through here so far, but we're told 39,000 of them have actually gone on their way to further destinations now, leaving 16,000 or so here. The ultimate question actually in those numbers is how many of those are SIV applicants. That's going to be an important question for the Biden administration moving forward, so they can explain whether they got the right people, how many of the right people they left behind, and what they're going to do with those who may be equally deserving but were not actually part of the official scheme. But today is an extraordinary sight we've certainly seen in Kabul. Video of Taliban on the airport itself. At some point towards midnight last night, local time, those final US aircraft departed from Afghanistan, and it's, I think, for so many involved in this war over 20 years, a moment of great reflection, possibly sadness at how this last month has proven so chaotic, despite the heroism and the valiance of getting so many people to safety from Afghanistan. And then also, too, a moment possibly of anxiety as we now wait to see what Afghanistan looks like without any foreign presence in it. Even though the final presence of the United States on the airport was so reduced, it is now a country run almost exclusively by the Taliban. A Taliban looking for international assistance, looking for continued aid, looking for that airport to be up and running again.
Okay, let's get the Jen Psaki.
Can you clarify whether the United States has an agreement with the Taliban to allow more Americans and other Afghans to leave the country?
Well, I will say, Jeff, that it is not just our expectation, but also the expectation of 100 countries around the world, the UN Security Council and others, that the Taliban will abide by what they committed to last Friday, which is the ability of people to leave Afghanistan should they choose to leave. There do need to be ongoing diplomatic negotiations, or discussions, I should say. That's a part of what the Secretary of State and his team will be leading. But I would note that the Taliban conveyed that on Friday, a leader of the Taliban. Again, more than half of the countries in the world have conveyed clearly what they expect, and the UN Security Council signed a resolution yesterday. So those are the diplomatic pieces that have moved forward, but this will be a top priority in the days ahead.
The president was critical today and has been critical of former President Trump's deal with the Taliban. Given that, I'm wondering if this administration or if this president gave any consideration to not holding on to former President Trump's special envoy to Afghanistan, who stayed on.
Look, I think the president wanted to be clear about what he was left when he took office, and he laid that out very clearly in his speech. But just to reiterate, since you gave me an opportunity, a couple of the points. When the president took office, there was a deadline that was just 3 months away that included, for May 1st, that included no requirement that the Taliban work out a cooperative governing agreement with the Afghan government. It did release
Afghanistan, who served under President Trump. Why did President
Lots
Biden
of penis music, lots of penis
The president
content.
has made changes where he saw fit and has not made changes where he felt the person continued to be the right person for the job. That's not a political decision. Go ahead.
So we heard from the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, this morning on Good Morning America. He's mentioned that 98% of those on the ground there in Afghanistan and a small number who remain, they have reached out. They got out, as many people as they could. Is the administration essentially placing blame on Americans who could not get to the airport in time?
I think what the president stated clearly, and I know that Jake Sullivan has stated clearly, and our Secretary of State has stated clearly, is that our commitment remains. there is not an end to our commitment to American citizens who are in Afghanistan who want to leave. That's the same for any country in the world, for American citizens who want to leave and want to come home to the United States. It's also important for people to note and understand what the process has been and what we've undergone over the past few months. And that's what the president laid out. And we think it's still important for the American people here in the United States to understand that.
One on Al-Qaeda. So we heard from the president a few moments ago saying that one of the main reasons to go into this war was to get Al-Qaeda. We have heard that Osama bin Laden's security chief has reportedly returned to Afghanistan and has been seen in public. Do you still believe, or does the administration believe, that Al-Qaeda is no longer a threat to America? And given the ISIS attacks that we've seen in the last week, how confident is the administration that Afghanistan isn't already a safe haven for terrorists?
Well, I think first there is a very big difference between terrorists' ability to attack U.S. troops in Kabul and to attack the homeland. And we do not assess that any terrorist group on the ground has the ability to attack the homeland in the United States. It is incumbent upon the president, the national security team, to prevent that from ever being the case. But there is a very big difference between those two.
Go ahead.
I know that the military obviously recommended to the president, or at least you said they recommended to the president that it would be best to leave, keep that August 31st deadline. But the president himself, in his interview with ABC News, said that if there's American citizens left, quote, we're going to stay until we get them all out. I think the president's explained his rationale for leaving 100+ Americans behind. But can you talk about why he allowed his credibility on this issue to sort of go out the door on making a flat promise and then not keeping it?
Well, first I would say that the president remains committed to getting every American citizen who wants to get out. That's an enduring commitment, one that will not change, and one we're going to focus on every single day. I would also note that over the course of the last 2 weeks, we have seen a terrorist attack that took the lives of 13 of our service members. And there was and part of our assessment always is going to be the risks, a risk assessment. So I think the question was, do you leave 6,000 service members as there are heightening threats, heightening risks every single day? Or do you work through a diplomatic process and efforts to ensure that we will have the ability to get these American citizens out? That's the assessment we made.
After that terror attack, you and he made clear that you weren't going to let the terrorists sort of dictate the timeline.
And we didn't, and we've evacuated tens of thousands of people since then.
I guess, was it a mistake for the president to have promised that we would remain until everybody left the country?
We are going to get every American citizen out. That has not changed.
One last one on, you mentioned the leverage that we might have and how access to the global marketplace was a big element of that. Can you kind of explain how the sanctions regime that's currently on the Taliban is going to apply to what is now the government of Afghanistan? Is there a chance for Afghanistan, the country, to access its reserves or sort of avoid those sanctions? Will the central bank be sanctioned? Are they going to have that ability as part of this sort of partnership that you've talked about?
Well, it's going to be based on what their behavior is. And I think the president clearly outlined that we're going to be watching, as the world will, what the Taliban does. That is certainly allowing American citizens to depart. It's certainly allowing Afghans and our partners to depart. It's also how they operate as it relates to treatment of women, to human rights. There's a range of factors at play here. So I don't have anything to predict for you. Obviously, there's a great deal of economic leverage. You referenced sanctions that are already in place that we have, that the global community has, and we'll have to assess how things happen over the course of the coming days, weeks, and months. Go ahead, Jackie.
Thanks, Jen. One question on the dignified transfer, and then I want to get to Afghanistan. Some of the Gold Star families have criticized the president's conduct at the dignified transfer. There was a father of one Marine who said that the president appeared to be checking his watch every time a flag-draped transfer case came out of the plane. And a sister of another Marine said that it felt like a fake and scripted apology. Was the president looking at his watch, and does he have a message to those people who felt that they were offended?
Well, I would say his message to all of the family members who were there, those who were not even in attendance, is that he is grateful to their sons and daughters, the sacrifice they made to the country, that he knows firsthand what it's like to lose a child, and the fact that no one can tell you anything or say anything, or there's no words that are going to fill that hole that is left by that. He's not going to speak to, and I'm not going to speak to, the private conversations. Of course, they have the right to convey whatever they would like. But I will tell you from spending a lot of time with him over the past couple of days that he was deeply impacted by these family members who he met just 2 days ago, that he talks about them frequently in meetings, and the incredible service and sacrifice of their sons and daughters. That is not going to change their suffering, but I wanted to convey that still. Go ahead.
On the future aid to the Taliban that Jake Sullivan was talking about this morning, he said when it comes to economic and development assistance with the relationship with the Taliban, it'll be about the Taliban's actions. Should we understand that to mean that economic and development assistance could translate to taxpayer money eventually going to the Taliban at some point? I know it's different from the humanitarian aid we've been talking about, the World Food Program and things like that, but these specific references that Sullivan made this morning.
Well, I would go back to kind of the earlier question on this. There's an enormous amount of money they have at in the Federal Reserve. I shouldn't say they. The government of Afghanistan has in the Federal Reserve, which they don't have access to right now. That's actually their money that's being held there. So that's one of the questions here. There are also sanctions that are in place on a number of leaders. Obviously, that prevents them from doing business in various parts of the world. I think that's really what Jake Sullivan was referring to.
Go ahead. To get back real quick to this issue of leverage, and I understand the U.S. plans to use that leverage for safe passage, but what specifically does the U.S. also want to see from the Taliban that they would use that leverage to get? You mentioned human rights or women's rights. Will the U.S. use its leverage if, for example, the Taliban doesn't allow girls to go to school or appears to be violating basic women's rights?
I think the president said that in his speech.
Okay. So things like access to the global marketplace would be contingent on girls being able to go to school, fundamental women's rights.
I'm not here to outline specific parameters for you, but what I can tell you broadly is that human rights, women's rights are certainly what the United States and also the global community will be looking at.
And I know the president also said in his speech that that assumption about how long the Afghan government would hold on, how long the military would be able to hold on, he acknowledged that that was a failed assumption. Who is responsible for that assumption? Is the president frustrated with his team at all for having made that false assumption?
We don't have the luxury of being frustrated. Our focus right now is on continuing to move forward on our diplomatic efforts and continuing to do everything we can to get our Afghan partners and American citizens out, and to get Afghans who have fought by our side safely settled in the United States and third countries around the world. Go ahead.
Was that like a military assumption, though, or was that an assumption coming from the
I don't think
intelligence
anyone
community?
assessed that they would collapse as quickly as they did. Anyone in this room, anyone in the region, anyone anywhere in the world. If you have anyone who did, I'd be surprised. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. The Afghan interpreter who helped rescue then Senator Joe Biden when he was stranded 13 years ago in Afghanistan.
They're such fucking little drama frogs, dude. They're like little LSF clippers that come in here. They're like, so what's the drama internally? Is he mad? Is he mad at his team? Come on, it's drama alert. I love that. I love that. It's literally just like so obvious what they're doing. It's like, come on, give us a little bit. Give us a little bit of inside baseball. Come on. Come on, just a little bit.
A number of my favorite people out of a snowstorm, and for all of the work you
Doing
did.
a movie about powerful, resilient desert fighters who overthrow the most powerful occupying force and reclaim their land premiere September 11 on IMAX. I'm so excited. Yeah, it's going to be tight.
And our focus right now is, as you heard John McKenzie say and others say over the last 24 hours, is to the diplomatic phase. We will get you out. We will honor your service, and we're committed to doing exactly that.
Thanks so much, Jen. Just to build on some of the things my colleagues were saying.
The other thing I was gonna say, I'm totally forgetting now. Fuck. Oh, the Gold Star families, like, they're really upset.
Dating back several months. But things, as you just noted, changed dramatically in the last few weeks. My question is...
Oh, don't you love imperialism, dude? Don't we love it, folks? Don't we love it? We have their money. She's literally like, it's their money and we're holding it hostage. Which, by the way, every European country does to, like, African nations that they've colonized in the past, still to this day. And we do it all the time as well. Like, we literally have their fucking money, dog.
And their family members and 115,000 other people from Afghanistan. So more than 120,000 people made their way to the airport or was able to evacuate from the country. It is also very understandable, and I want to be very clear here, the vast majority, if not everyone, though the State Department would have to speak to this, who is still there, are dual citizens who have lived their entire lives in Afghanistan. This is about, I know this is hard for people to understand who grew up and live here. This is where they've lived. This is where their family members are. This is their communities. Maybe they own shops. Maybe they have 50 family members or 20 family members. This is not an easy decision to leave. We understand that. And what the president is saying is, if you decide to leave next week, if you decided 2 days ago and we couldn't get you out, we're going to get you out. And that's what his commitment is.
Can I ask about the immigration system and the refugee situation? The U.S. immigration system is already very overstretched. It's dysfunctional. I wanted to know, what steps is the administration taking to ensure that the tens of thousands of Afghan people who are being resettled here in the United States are not going to be caught up in red tape and that they're going to get the resources they need?
Well, first, the president has asked the Secretary of Homeland Security to lead this effort. And there is a process that includes not just a thorough background check and vetting process, but as individuals come to the United States, some will end up going to military bases where they will have access to a range of resources, including vaccines. Those who are parolees will be required to get those vaccines. And what we are working to do is ensure we are leveraging and working with all of the incredible refugee resettlement organizations around the country who are eager and open to helping these Afghan refugees, also to veterans organizations who are eager and open to helping these Afghan refugees resettle in the United States and work through as orderly a process using every lever of government, from the U.S. military to the Department of Homeland Security, to move this process as rapidly as we can. Go ahead, Amy.
The president was very clear today, as he has been, about why he thinks U.S. forces should not be in Afghanistan right now. But he was part of the Obama administration in 2014 when the then president decided he needed to send troops back to Iraq after several years to deal with the Islamic State threat. Does the president rule out needing to send troops back to Afghanistan to deal with a similar threat should it arise now?
I'm not going to look into a crystal ball in the future, but I think he's been pretty clear he doesn't have an intention to start another war and redeploy troops to Afghanistan. And what we've seen over the past week is that our over-the-horizon capacity can work and has worked in going after ISIS targets and killing people who went after our troops. So that's where our resources and our focus is going to be on at this point in time.
I have another little bit of a crystal ball question.
Okay.
Ultimately it will be up to the president to decide whether to establish diplomatic relations with a Taliban only or Taliban-led government. And while Secretary Blinken and others have set some of the parameters for that, does the president himself have a view about whether it would be appropriate to ever have a full U.S. diplomatic relationship with the Taliban?
Well, just like in any circumstance, it would depend on the conditions. But there's no rush to recognition coming from any aspect of this government or from the international community. Go ahead.
Building on Ann's first question, does the president envision any situation in which he might deploy a large amount of U.S. troops abroad under his presidency? Any sort of foreign conflict that would require the sort of mass troop deployment that he just said we are trying to move past?
I think one of the pieces that he talked about in the speech was how he views our engagement in the world. And I think this is probably why you're asking this question. And the horrible scenes and memories of the last few weeks. And as we think about how we embark on or how we use military force, these moments and these divisions of the last several weeks or months or years should stick in us, and stick in our minds. He made clear, first, we must set missions with clear, achievable goals, not ones we will never reach. And second, we must stay clearly focused on the fundamental national security interests of the United States. I mean, the president has not hesitated to use force when warranted. When he feels it's been warranted. He has done strikes in certain parts of the world. He has made very clear, and he said today, our work with you, we're not done with you, ISIS. That was a paraphrase, but he said it better. And that, I think, sends a clear message that he's going to go after terrorists. He's not going to hesitate to use the capacities and capabilities we have. But he also wants to be mindful about how we
She's
use,
like, the media basically is like, come on, can we get like a little bit of war? Like, what's going on? Is there going to be more wars? Like, can you give us something, like anything, please? Just give us something, like a crumb. I need a crumb.
For his economic agenda, particularly facing the month in Congress.
Like, what if there's like a big bad guy out there? Will they send troops there?
Be communicating over the coming weeks on a range of issues that are front and center on the minds of the American people.
I'm surprised not a single one of them has been like, what if 9/11-2 happens? What then? Can we go back to being like psychotic, bloodthirsty maniacs? Or what? Or are we done with that? You know what I mean? Come on! Just a little bit, dude.
There are a range of issues he's eager to communicate about. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Did the president watch the takeoff of the last flight from Afghanistan yesterday? And has he been in contact with, any of the service members who were on the last flight?
Well, he did. I know there's been some reporting out there on this, but I can confirm for you that the president learned of the last flight safely leaving Afghanistan when he was in the Oval Office, meeting with members of his national security team and some senior advisors. And a note was passed to his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, who conveyed it to the president, the news to the president. Obviously, in those cases, for those of you who have watched these events closely, you have to wait until they're out of airspace. Hence, it was a little bit before you saw the announcement by the Pentagon. And he has conveyed repeatedly in meetings that I have at least been in to the military how grateful he is for their work, for the fact that they oversaw a historic airlift operation, one that evacuated more than 120,000 people in the middle of a civil war facing ISIS threats. He's conveyed his gratitude to them and to the work of his national security team repeatedly.
When does the president plan to sign the bill that was passed in the Senate today that provides temporary assistance to Americans returning from Afghanistan?
I'm sure as soon as possible, but I will have to check. Go ahead, Karen.
Thanks, Jen. Just to go back to the line of questions from Justin, you heard the president say today that he remains committed to getting those Americans out. You said that commitment remains. You said it's an enduring commitment. You talked about the risk assessment that's been underway over the last couple of days or weeks, but it was less than 2 weeks ago when the president told ABC yes when he was asked, are you committed to making sure troops stay until every American who wants to get out gets out? He said yes. So obviously situations have changed, the threat increased as you've said, but why should those Americans believe that this commitment is enduring when 13 days ago that commitment changed?
Because he's evacuated 5,500 American citizens and their family members and 120,000 total people over the last 2 weeks, nearly all of them since that time. But
you've described the drone strikes as successful and that America still has over-the-horizon capability. It appears that several children were killed in one of the drone strikes. Can you say that it was still successful if that was the collateral damage? And how will the U.S. determine that it has the intelligence necessary to keep carrying out these drone strikes if civilians are going to be caught in the crossfire?
Well, first I would say we take civilian casualties and the possibility of civilian casualties incredibly seriously in our U.S. military, perhaps more than any other country in the world. There is an investigation, and I don't believe the military or CENTCOM has spoken to or confirmed what has been some reporting out there by news organizations. I will note that in CENTCOM's statement just 2 nights ago, they made clear that their assessment was that there was the vehicle that was the target also had explosives in it, and those explosives may have also led to an impact on the ground, but there's an investigation that's ongoing.
And you're confident that in the 2 drone strikes the U.S. did, terrorists were killed in both of those strikes?
I believe that's the assessment that's been put out by CENTCOM. Go ahead, April.
In Afghanistan and Ida. First, I want to start with Ida. When Katrina happened, then President George W. Bush put the Gulf Coast in a special category. And then President Obama, as you remember, you were here at that time, kept it in that category for a while to build it back up. Are we at that point now where some parts of the Gulf Coast, specifically New Orleans and that area, will be placed in another category to help rebuild yet again because of the devastation of Ida?
Well, April, I will say that we're only on a couple days into the storm. I know you've covered these, as you've referenced in the past, and we don't know how to assess yet all of the impacts. But what I think the people of the region and the Gulf Coast should look at to evaluate how committed the president is to this is all of the preemptive resources he put in place, all of those he sent to the region, and the number of resources he's continuing to deploy from the federal government. So I can't assess that at this point in time, but I can tell you that the president receives briefings about the hurricane every single day, sometimes more than once a day, and has been for several days, and he's committed to delivering on whatever the needs are to help the Gulf Coast recover.
Afghanistan, we talked to Greg Meeks, the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he said there will indeed be congressional hearings on this longest war in U.S. history from the beginning to this moment. What is the expectation of this administration when it comes to these hearings, and what are you willing to offer? Full transparency as it relates to how all...
Notice how we talk about the civilian casualties. It's like, collateral damage. What are you going to do?
I would say first, we've already done several briefings.
Probably a good reason for why we should get the fuck out. You know what I mean?
Over the course of the last several weeks, and that speaks to our commitment to answering questions they have and being able to play our role and working with them on addressing the last 7 months. Now it's a 20-year war, so there's obviously a lot to dig into.
One more, but following up on that, but would you be willing to, would this administration be willing to sit before a hearing, some in this administration
Penis music is coming.
Congress and answer questions about their part in this war?
Again, I think we've clearly already been participating in Congress's asks, and we have already been briefing them. There haven't been specific requests made that I am aware of, and as they come, we'll speak to those.
Embassies in the area doing in Europe and Spain to support this effort to help get Americans out and just this evacuation and going and moving, shifting from the military operation to that of diplomacy?
Well, there's been a huge role that our nation's diplomats have been playing already to date. Obviously, there's been a Herculean effort by the U.S. military on the ground, but our diplomats, the consular officers, many of them who are on the ground, or those who are making tens of thousands of phone calls to identify Afghan applicants, members of the vulnerable population, American citizens, that work will continue. And that work will continue to help get American citizens and others who have fought by our side out of the country. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, the president said there's no deadline to get the remaining Americans who want to leave out of Afghanistan. But is there an acceptable timeline for the president for them coming home?
Well, I would say, Rachel, if someone decides in a year they want to leave Afghanistan, we're going to help them leave. If somebody is now ready to, we're going to help them leave as quickly as possible. So I think that's what he was conveying. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. I want to follow up on my question yesterday about deserving Afghans who did not get to leave. I think many people would understand that in the fog of war, despite the best efforts of the Marines and consular officers on the ground, mistakes are made. Marines could grab people or push people out of the gate because of a security threat, for example. But what I was talking about were these specific allegations from our sources on the ground and people who are assisting in these rescue operations who say that because of inconsistent policies, conflicting policies, and also a lack of coordination between the State Department and the Pentagon, and also competing interests from people in Washington with influence who are pulling strings, this creates a chaos in which vulnerable Afghans, including SIVs, were left behind, but individuals who may not have who is not an at-risk individual gets to leave. So is the administration
willing to admit responsibility for the situation, and what would be your remedy?
I have no confirmation of what you've just outlined. What I will tell you is that 117,000, approximately, many of them Afghans, people who are not American citizens, were evacuated. That's more people than ever in any airlift in U.S. history. And what our U.S. Marines and what our military did on the ground was work to evacuate as many people as humanly possible, as quickly as possible. And many of those people were SIV applicants. Many of them were green card holders. Obviously, we've given you the number of American citizens, and many of them were just people from the vulnerable populations who we were able to get out. But we are committed to continuing to work in a diplomatic manner to get more people out who want to evacuate. And I would reiterate that we've worked already to get support for a statement from 100 countries around the world to pass a UN Security Council resolution and to make clear to the Taliban that that's our expectation. Yamish, go ahead.
With the lily pad countries agreement, can you give us an overall picture of the structure of these agreements with these countries? What are we paying or providing them in return? And how do we deal with local resentment? And this would also apply to people around American bases who may feel concerned about the threat of either COVID or a terrorist threat. How are we dealing with that?
Well, what we're doing is we're relying on all of you to convey clearly what our COVID protocols are, what our security protocols are, what our vetting protocols are, and we're also communicating very closely with governors and leaders in the region. Every country has different agreements. This is not a quid pro quo situation. This is where the international community recognized the need of the Afghan people, and nearly 24 countries have met this moment to have a place where individuals who are leaving Afghanistan can be, some before they go to third countries, some before they come to the United States. Jamish, go ahead. I think we got to move on, Patsy. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. My question, the president said that the U.S. should learn from its mistakes in the past. Does the president have any mistakes that he thinks he made during this withdrawal in Afghanistan that he wants to learn from?
Well, I would say I think the president's been pretty clear that we all had an expectation that the Afghan National Security Forces would fight harder in the end, would fight against the Taliban. We all had an expectation that President Ghani would not flee the country. Those were not expectations that were clearly met. So you can spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. What our focus now on is moving forward on our diplomatic effort, settling Afghan refugees, SIV applicants, and others who are coming to the United States, doing that in a very thorough and clear way, and also getting them settled in communities. That's what our focus has to be on.
That he shouldn't have made those assumptions about the Afghan government? Is that the lesson for him then?
Well, I think most people made that assumption, but I don't have any more for you.
I only ask that because he said that the U.S. should learn from their mistakes, but if there's
right, and he laid out clearly what he thinks they are over the past 20 years. Yeah.
On Louisiana, the governor said that he's worried that the power outages might start affecting the hospitals. Can you make any clarification on whether or not the FEMA can do anything more to help utility companies, and whether or not there's any sort of estimates on whether or not hospitals will be affected?
Well, so initial reports from the local hospital distributor network indicate no supply chain disruptions, but he is right. I mean, this is an area where we are all watching, and this is why we are continuing to ensure there are necessary generators there, that we are engaged closely with health administrators and others about what their needs are and how we can deliver on them. One of the primary limiting factors on oxygen, which we don't see a shortage on, but is obviously an issue that we have to watch closely, is actually hazmat certified drivers. And what this is people who can drive around these oxygen tanks and facilities out to the hospital. So there's a number of pieces that we have to work through, and we are preparing in case there is a need in that regard.
Thank you, Jen. 2 quick follow-ups. Yesterday I asked about the Washington Post story that reported that the Taliban offered the United States control of Kabul, and instead the United States focused on the airport. Have you been able to review that report, and is it accurate?
Well, I'm not going to speak to private conversations, but what I will tell you is that it obviously required the deployment of 6,000 U.S. military forces to secure the airport, given the Afghan National Security Forces collapsed from that protection. Our objective has never been, and the president's been very clear about this, having a military presence to control Kabul. So that's never been our objective.
You've talked about how our commitment remains to these Americans, and you talked about how we're switching from a military effort to a diplomatic effort. For the Americans who are currently in hiding and who very much want to come home, not the other set, what is the administration's message to them? Should they try and head to the border? Should they try and book a flight out of there? Or should they remain in hiding and hope that the diplomacy kicks in?
Well, I would just note that we are in touch with a number of these Americans. Not every one, perhaps, but we are in touch. We are in touch with as many of them who we can make contact with through a range of means. That continues. And what our focus is on now, and we'll have day-by-day updates, and this is a very fair and good question, is how can we ensure operationally that there are a range of options for people to be able to depart? Some of that may be over land, over borders. Some of that may be through airplanes. And so we're working again with the Qataris and the Turks on that. We're working to get the civilian side of the airport operational, but those are all pieces we're focused on.
Is the administration preparing for worst case scenario in some circumstances, hostage situations?
Look, our focus right now is on making clear to the Taliban and to others in Afghanistan that we are going to get these American citizens out, that we are going to hold them to that account. And that's our focus. Thanks, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow.
You told me that yesterday. Can I ask you, now that I have your attention, can I ask you one question?
Why didn't he name them today?
Press Secretary Jen Psaki answering questions from reporters about Afghanistan, but also, of course, a range of topics that the White House is grappling with right now. Welcome to this Washington Post special report. I'm Libby Casey. With me this afternoon is Washington Post columnist James Hohmann. So, James, we have witnessed
Literally
President Biden's speech
homie
earlier today talking about the war in Afghanistan, announcing
I'm
that
almost
it is
done.
indeed over. And also,
I can't wait for him to just like fucking be like, we need to permanently occupy Afghanistan. Terrible decision. Let's just keep going.
Down. Do we get any more clarification from
Hold
Jen
on,
Psaki
I'm coming in a
about
second.
the loose threads? For example, Americans that are still in Afghanistan, and then allies, people who have helped American forces or would qualify for evacuation if they've either done their paperwork or could do their paperwork yet.
We really didn't, Libby, and I think for those who just watched that briefing, it highlighted the big challenges that remain and the lack of clear answers other than this sort of broad commitment to try to get them out, to use our leverage, whether that's with money or recognition, that we're in touch, or the American government, I should say, is in touch with some of these 100 to 200, and that there are going to be efforts to continue to speak up for human rights and that kind of a thing. There continue to be questions about the evacuation that remain unanswered, certainly will be the focus of congressional investigations. And there was an acknowledgement by Jen Psaki there that it was President Biden himself, not the Taliban, that set the August 31st deadline. He moved it up from September 11th to August 31st. Psaki saying that that was because the military said they needed 120 days to fully evacuate once they got the order, and that Biden abided by that advice, in that it was his timeline, not the Taliban. And then our colleague Ann Gearin, one of the Washington Post White House reporters, asked two separate questions of Psaki that I thought were interesting. The first was, would Biden ever foresee sending American troops back into Afghanistan? And Psaki replying that she's not going to look into a crystal ball, but he doesn't have intention to start another war, and the U.S. has over-the-horizon capabilities, notably not ruling out sending in more troops and potentially going back in at some point in some capacity to get Americans who remain. And then the second question from Ann Gearin was, will there be full diplomatic recognition of the Taliban? Psaki also not ruling that out, saying it depends on the individual circumstances of what that kind of deal might look like, but also that there's, quote, no rush to recognition. But I thought the most striking thing about that whole press conference was that it sort of validated what I'm hearing from folks at the White House, Libby, which is that the White House is sort of banking frankly, that public attention is going to move on sooner than later. And I was struck by the number of questions during that briefing that were not about Afghanistan. Obviously, there's a lot of other news, a lot of significant news, including the hurricane Ida, but also the economy and COVID. And it was really striking, just the sheer number of questions. And Psaki saying, tomorrow when September starts, the president wants to start talking more about COVID and infrastructure, schools reopening, and she said a range of issues he's been eager to engage on. And the White House's hope is that the world does kind of move on, and that the plight of the Afghans drifts off the front pages. But there are, as we were just talking about, so many unanswered questions.
One reporter asked about a specific Afghan individual who was profiled in the Wall Street Journal, and they cited that article. And the reporter said, what about this Afghan interpreter who helped out then Senator Biden and some other senators back in 2008? He says he's now in hiding. He is asking, please don't forget me here. And we did hear Jen Psaki address that. So there's that individual, but sort of as a representative of other Afghans who are in a similar plight. And she was reassuring. But James, how far does that reassurance go in terms of the nuts and bolts of how anyone who qualifies?
Bro, the man who cares about the Afghan plight has logged on, dude. The Afghan plight understander has logged on, folks. I mean, he's here, and he's ready to tell you how much he cares about the Afghan plight by, advocating for permanent war, and then turning around and being like, us pulling out was devastating, and bro, trust me, bro, like, we gotta keep fucking, bombing Afghanistan, bro. Really disrespectful of Joe Biden to pull out, dude. Really fucked up. I'm done. I'm done with this fucking piece of shit. Where'd you get your race card, Did you forget your race card,